Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. A week is the big frame of reference, isn't it? A week. In this last week, a 29-year-old man has fought a 59-year-old granddad and 60 million people tuned in. A week in which a convicted everything has been elected President of the United States. But more importantly, ladies and gents, we're inside a week until the Reds are back in action and we can bin these international breaks at least for a little while. And I'm joined as ever by the renowned and the respected David Lynch, who I'm hoping, David, had a little break during this international window, fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's not really. I mean, obviously, I don't get to be off work and just put my feet up completely. But the pace is a little bit different in terms of not being at a press conference every couple of days and not being at a match, and so that's kind of nice. You get to do a bit of big picture stuff. So I quite enjoy these breaks. But obviously, it's head down after this until March. So yeah, just preparing myself for that, I guess.
Yeah, there is a hell of a schedule set to unfold over the next weeks and months, no doubts about it. So today, ladies and gents, we'll look at various things. We'll look at the players, where we are so far, who we're calling out. We'll talk about Arne Slot, what he's done, where we think he could improve, which is near on impossible, but it's always good to talk about. We'll talk about transfers in the January window. There's three big players. I don't know if you've heard of them. We're looking to sign contracts, so we'll have a bit of a discussion around them. And we'll finish with the big week ahead when we get back to the action. So I suppose, David, it makes sense to talk about the players first of all. I mean, this feels like a great gut check time. 5 points clear at the top. I still love saying that. Perfect in the Champions League. There's been so many stellar performances. And I'm going to put you on the block straight away for this one. Who are your three best Liverpool players so far this season?
Yeah, so I think it is fair to say it's quite difficult because the performances have generally been so outstanding, and in nailing it down to 3 hours, when I had a little think about this and you sent the agenda over, I was kind of like, I'm going to leave out some big guns here. So it feels really, really harsh. But if you have to name three, you have to name three. And I think the best place to start is probably the easiest one, which is I just don't see how you could ever come up with the top three players of the year so far and not put Mohamed Salah in there. And the goals and the assists are just right up there again, as we become completely accustomed to every year. But I will always say that the hardest thing to do on a football pitch is put the ball in the back of the net or create moments where that ends up happening. Obviously, I say that because I play up front, but generally speaking, I think that's true. That's why they get paid so much money. So yeah, and I think he is just doing that again, as he has always done for Liverpool. He's putting the ball in the back of the net or ensuring it ends up there by allowing others to do it. So you can't make a top three that doesn't have him in it. So he absolutely has to be there. And yeah, again, I just want to sometimes sort of dwell on the fact that he is absolutely outrageous footballer, and at some point he's not going to be at Liverpool, and whenever that is, you just make the absolute most of him. He's a joy to watch. And yeah, in terms of the other two, I think, I kind of threw a few over in my head about, who this could be. And I mean, as I'm leaving, you've got to leave some players out. But I think what it is with this particular player, it's not just about the quality of the performances, which have been outrageous and absolutely crucial to Liverpool and where they are, but it's also kind of the surprise factor. So it's Ryan Gravenberch. And I just think, coming into this season, I had a conversation with someone at Liverpool, a kind of a source I speak to quite a lot over the summer, and around the time it was kind of put to me that the Liverpool were very unlikely to sign a holding midfielder after Zubimendi had turned them down. And the way I put it was, look, I totally understand how this recruitment staff works, and I understand there were mitigating circumstances in terms of the profile they were looking for had changed under this manager, so they didn't have a huge list of number sixes they could dip into. And it was a difficult window anyway with the amount of change that they had there. So, and I totally understand why they didn't have an automatic pick to go to after Zubimendi turned them down. But I remember saying quite clearly, but it's very, very hard to see where Liverpool improve on last season if they don't get that position that seems so crucial to them, and if they don't strengthen in that area, because it's been a weakness for a few years now. And And so where are you going to see that improvement if not through the market sometimes? And this person didn't come back to me and say, well, watch what Ryan Gravenberch does. I don't think anybody expected this. The person said to me that there were improvements in certain areas, which was absolutely right. Things like set pieces, things like not conceding the first goal in every bloody game, maybe getting a couple of decisions going their way, which maybe didn't happen in key moments last season. But nobody mentioned Ryan Gravenberch, and he has just been sensational. He's been the answer to all those problems I was talking about in the number 6 position. It's not just he can play it and he's doing a passable job. He's playing it as well as anybody out there, particularly since Rodri got his injury. He's got literally everything on both sides of the ball. Ability to nick it, really good reading of the game, always seems to be right place, right time. Great legs to get about the pitch. And then on the other side of the ball, progressive with his passing, progressive with his dribbling, really, really good in tight areas. So you can't nick it off him in dangerous areas. Just literally the answer to Liverpool's dreams in the kind of number 6 position, which, I did not see coming. And so, I'm probably damning him with fake praise, actually, by saying that the surprise element has got him in this top 3, because he could arguably just be there anyway. But that's really sort of boosted it for me, is that I did not see this coming. I don't think many people outside of maybe Arne Slot and the player himself saw it coming either. So he's been a joy to watch and absolutely makes that top 3 for me. And then kind of the last one, again, probably being unfair in the ones I'm leaving out here. So, honourable mention to Diaz, who I think has been unbelievable, right up there with Mo for goals. And again, been a nice surprise package. Obviously, Virgil van Dijk is Virgil van Dijk. But again, just what the fella next to him is doing, I just don't see how I can leave him out. I mean, Van Dijk, he probably arguably has been better in everything he does. He's got that passing range and his leadership qualities. You can't really sort of surmise what they actually bring to the table, alongside the fact that he's comfortably the best centre-half in the world. But I do think Ibrahima Konate has to do more in games, because players won't go anywhere near Van Dijk, and therefore Konate is always going to be busier. And so he has been busier. And for me, it's just been, since he came on at half-time against Ipswich, utterly phenomenal in everything he's done. Again, apparently there's this weakness on the ball. We haven't really seen that. He's been great in his passing, really calm in that. And then the defending, when he's in a run of form and he's playing consistently like this, we know he's as good as anybody in that. And he's stronger, he's quicker, he's calmer than any centre forward he's come up against this season. And he's basically locked all of them up, really. And so his partnership with Van Dijk is out of this world, really. And I think, as I say, he has to do a little bit more than Van Dijk, which is not Van Dijk's fault. And again, maybe I'm getting a bit blasé about Van Dijk's performances because we are so used to it. But maybe that little surprise element of Konate staying fit this long and playing this well has maybe just bumped him up against Van Dijk. But I'm probably being extremely harsh on Van Dijk there.
Yeah, I'd be honest, I'd probably have Virgil as my player of the year so far. I think probably, even I do it, let's just expect Virgil to be 9 out of 10 every week. That's just what we've become accustomed to. We expect him to make the last-ditch tackle, to read the ball. We even enjoy that bit where he kind of just looks really annoyed when he has to do a tackle because something's gone wrong as well. But we are just blasé about it. And this is good news we got today. He is now out of the Dutch camp, isn't he? They released him because it's kind of a dead rubber. That's big positive news for us, isn't it?
Yeah, again, I mean, one of the big talking points, and we will talk about contracts more in depth later in the pod, no doubt. But I think, one of the big things your whole question marks around the couple of these players is age and what that will do to them. So every game fewer that they get in the legs is always a boost, and having him ready for this big run that's coming up, to just miss one game with the international break, come back, have a couple of days, put your feet up, and then get back into training ready for that Southampton game, and then what's to come after that. And so it's just massively helpful. These are long seasons, and we saw last season that Liverpool, primarily through the injury crisis, but also just generally a grueling season, can take its toll later on in the campaign, even if you can get yourself through. And we kind of saw that last season. So even these little bonuses of where they miss a game here and there in this early part of the season is massively helpful. And it's also one game less where there's a chance that they get an injury anyway. So it's, really, really helpful and a big boost for Liverpool.
Positive news. And one of the photos that struck me during the international break, There's Mo Salah enjoying himself on the rides at Disneyland Paris. So he's having a great international break while others are worrying about different things. I mean, out of all those players you mentioned, I did want to phrase it this way specifically. Is he the indispensable player, Mo Salah, for you? Is he the one that if he was to go out for any period, you would be like, we're in a bit of trouble here?
Yeah, because I just don't see where that kind of volume of production in front of goal comes from outside of him, really. I mean, I'd say, Luis Diaz, we'll have to see if this is sustainable, and we don't have, a wealth of evidence that it is. So you are a little bit cynical about that. It hopefully continues in this vein, and this is just how he works under this new manager. And I really do hope that's the case. But at the moment, you don't feel like you can rely on that. Jota's the other one who, in terms of goals and assists, always tends to be up there. But obviously, he's out at the moment, and you worry about his fitness with that. Salah is just consistently available and consistently brilliant, and he just scores goals and he makes assists, and I think he's the hardest to replace out of those two. I think you're in real trouble if you're ever in a period where Salah and Jota are both out, by the way, I think for just having out and out finishes on the pitch. But I think Salah is he contributes much more than Jota in general play as well. He's one of the top players in the world, really, isn't he? Even in his position, even one of the top forwards in the world. So I think he probably is indispensable, really. I don't think there's anyone can get close to what he does. And he's doing the hardest thing, as I say, in football, so over and over again. So, really, really wouldn't like to see an injury to him. And so, again, him missing this international break, getting his feet up, or not so much getting his feet up as getting on a roller coaster or whatever, but at least having a nice time and a bit of a rest and some chill time. Because, again, it's going to be a grueling period for him as well that's coming up. And there's no... thankfully there's no AFCON this season, but there's enough games to go around for Liverpool. So, any games that he's able to miss for Egypt is really helpful to Liverpool.
Yeah, that rest, especially in a great way, especially with the age that they are, Salah and Van Dijk, is just absolutely brilliant news. And there's a couple of other questions I want to ask you about players. And this one's a bit of a unique one I'm going to ask you. Who's been the best non-starter of the season? And what I mean by that is, we know Slot was quite entrenched in his team. There was minimal rotation at the start of the season. And sometimes it's by luck, by design, but the likes of Kelleher, Tsimikas have come into the team. Darwin Núñez has forced his way in. We can't even pretend Curtis Jones was a starter right at the beginning of the season. That would be false. So who's your kind of non-starter that's forced their way in, Award?
Yeah, so I mean, they have all contributed, and again, we talk about City's injury crisis and Arsenal's injury crisis, if you want to call it that. I'm sure they are calling it that. But Liverpool have had a few issues of their own in areas where they've had to bring people in. Robertson's form's been up and down, so Tsimikas has had to come in maybe more than you would expect. Jota missing, and so Núñez has played quite a lot of games recently. In that midfield, Jones is the next cab off the rank, so you absolutely need to get games out of them, and they've all done really, really well. All kept the form going, all played big roles in that. But I think for me, the standout of all those is Kelleher, just because Alisson was a long injury. It was you're losing arguably the best player in the world in his position, and that the defensive record at the start of the season had been this is something to hold on to. This is Liverpool have developed here. So you lose a key cog in that, and you start to wonder whether there's going to be issues there. And Kelleher has just come in and been absolutely flawless pretty much. And to the point that I think between, the last international break and this one, we just barely discussed Alisson's absence. When Liverpool went to Arsenal, nobody really mentioned it while they were focusing on the injuries that Arsenal had. And like I say, there is no replacement there for him because he's the best goalkeeper in the world. So the fact that you've got a guy who's come in, who your academy's produced, by the way, and can perform to that level, he's just been absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, again, he's done himself no harm in terms of getting that move at the end of the season, which I'm sure he would still want. I think he's really shown to everybody now that he's a Champions League level goalkeeper, and he deserves interest of that level. And Liverpool haven't missed a beat without Alisson, which is the biggest compliment I think you can pay to Kelleher, really, is that he's been a big part of that.
It's just ridiculous, the level of talent of goalkeepers we've got at the moment. Even with Kashvili to come in, it is sensational. Couple of other ones I'll ask you, and I tell you what, there's a few contenders for this. best goal we've scored this season?
Let me think.
There's a few.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Well, give me some thinking time. What's yours? I don't think I'd written one down for this one, so I'm just trying to think. What's in the contention here?
I think Diaz against United, one of those two's got to be in there. Mo Salah's, the Mo Salah scrapbook of the curler against Bologna, the winner against Brighton's got to be in there as well. There was the Diaz Brentford, was it? When, the back to front move that was flowing. There's just been so many.
Yeah, I think it's the Brighton one. Sorry, yeah, it was Mo Salah for Brighton. I had a thought about this one, and it is Mo Salah for Brighton, just because of what it meant as well. I mean, but it's such a quality finish. I mean, the way he cuts inside in terms of just completely, the fullback shows him the back of his shirt. He's that confused about what's going because he just gives him the little shimmy beforehand, cuts inside, opens the space up, and then, I remember sitting in the ground, the feeling you knew exactly where that was going. And I think we said at the time actually about this goal that it was he kind of added this back into his repertoire, really, this really powerful one into the top corner rather than even like a lofty curler. And what it meant at the time and what the ground was like to be there to see that one. I think that was my favourite one. And the fact it was like a 1-2 punch that they'd scored just before. It was just, such a great moment, really. And really, really good finish. But just, more than just a moment, it was a great, great goal and well worked. So really, really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, it was pretty special. And it may or may not steer into this one. I don't know. Best atmosphere at Anfield this season.
Yeah, Brighton's right up there. And I think, that was pretty special for just because of the nature of the game and turning it around. I mean, honourable mention to Bayer Leverkusen, which was fantastic. Yeah. But really, really got going in the second half as Liverpool kind of blew them away. That was a real privilege to be there. And then Aston Villa was very good, which was helped out by, City dropping points beforehand as well. That really added to it, and particularly at the end when Slot is saluting the cop, that felt really kind of like a special moment. But I do think it is Brighton because it was such a struggle in that first half, and I think all the best kind of games and all the best results are the ones where there's a moment of doubt before it, and then, and that all kind of kicks in. And to come from behind and City have dropped points that day as well. Actually, it happens at the same time, and the words going around the ground that they're losing 2-0, I think it was at the time, and then Liverpool start to kick on. It was phenomenal, and it was the first real taste, I think, that Slot got of what Anfield could be as well. That was really, really nice, and he said, remarked after the match, he kind of that it was special. It was the best he'd seen it so far. So I think that was really, really good, and hopefully there's loads more to come as well, because they're gonna need the Anfield factor a few times this season, and there'll be games where it's really difficult, as Brighton made it, and games where the crowd and the team are gonna have to work together to turn it around. So yeah, that one was the best so far, and really looking forward to more of those, to be honest.
Yeah, and the main man, I mean, he has unlocked so much. He's been brilliant this season. I was probably a bit mean with the top 3 players of the year, so I'll give you a bit of freedom on this. What's been the best thing, or it might be plural, best things for you about Arne Slot and his reign so far?
I just love the speed with which he's made them defensively solid. I thought that would prove trickier and to sort of unpick some bad habits from last season about Liverpool being very gung-ho and trying to bring a little bit more patience. I just thought that was going to take more time, and yet here we are, Liverpool, best defensive record in the Premier League, best expected goals against, so fully deserving of that record. And they are, very, very difficult to score against. And the fact that he's, embedded that habit so quickly with the, pre-season was difficult. Players all over the world, at tournaments and coming back late, so not a lot of time to kind of work on that. So I thought that was going to be, working on anything kind of new was really tricky. But I thought you really did see kind of early in pre-season that he was having an impact and things were different. And then it was kind of like, okay, well, when the real stuff starts, it's probably going to prove to be tricky, and then the first half against Ipswich happens and you think, oh, this is a bit of a shambles, actually. It's not great. Wish you'd had a couple more weeks before the season started. But then ever since then, they've just looked a really, really well-drilled side and really, really resilient. And that's not well-drilled by, they're coming out and dominating every game yet. It's nowhere close to that. They aren't that. But what they are is even the lowest moments in games, it's so hard to create good opportunities against them. So that is the thing that's kind of surprised me the most. And, all the stuff I read about Slot beforehand didn't really sort of scream to me, okay, he's he's not a defensive manager, but it didn't scream to me that would come in and that would be his first priority. And all of a sudden Liverpool would stop kind of conceding goals at any rate. But that's been a really sort of pleasant surprise. And as I say, the biggest surprise of all is the speed with which he's done it. So that's really, really impressive.
Yeah, it is unreal. Like the defensive solidity in the entire team is. I suppose the other thing I wanted to ask you, with the talk of how good a coach and how good a start Arne Slot's had, is it struck you that the backups, the squad, everyone seems to have kicked on? Like even Trent's gone to another level. Those are the starters. But Kelleher come in seamless. Tsimikas seems to have gone on to another level. Curtis Jones seems to be getting better. Even Darwin Núñez, he's getting a tune out of him at the moment as well. Is that the sign for you of almost an elite coach and what he's doing at the moment?
Yeah, and I don't know necessarily. I mean, it's a combination of a couple of things as well. I mean, we all heard the story, didn't we, about Trent being told about moving his body angle a certain amount of degrees, and that would help him to defend one-on-one situations. So there's clearly that individual coaching is going on. But Slot always talks, doesn't he, in press conference about just, if the team is set up in a certain way, it will get the best out of individuals. And that the combination of those two is, as you say, we've basically seen improvement across the entire squad so far this season. And that's not just your guaranteed starters, it's the guys who are coming in for them as well. So he's just doing a phenomenal job in that. And I mean, if you can, you did kind of think in maybe Klopp's last couple of seasons that there were elements of improvement that could be eked out of the squad, some percentages being left on the table. I mean, in his last season, primarily being left there by injuries, but also, generally you could felt that there was more to get out of the squad and that the age profile would maybe allow that with quite a few of the players. And we're really seeing Slot deliver on that as well. So, if you are getting, improvement out of the collective and the individual at the same time, then when you've got this much talent around you, you're going to have a very good football team. And that's what we're seeing. And that, as you say, testament to how good Slot is the coach and the improvement that he's got there. And, hopefully even more to come over the course of a season, because it's only a couple of, 3-4 months into his reign so far. So I'm sure there's a lot more he can work on as well, which is, really, really exciting when he started this well.
Yeah, hopefully with players coming back soon at the same time. So it is all positive. I suppose this is nitpicking, and I'm being honest about this because there's so much to like. The one concern I would say seems to be with the collective, the 4-2-4 out of possession, that high press, and sometimes particularly it looks like Gravenberch, McAllister can get outnumbered. But at the same time, it does almost seem by design force the play wide. Yes, we'll keep that 4 at the back and, force you to try and break us down, which you won't most of the time. Is there really an element of concern for that there for you, or are you thinking, no, this is by design, I'm comfortable with this now?
I think there is probably more of that to it than we would maybe accept, and maybe that's kind of surprising that he doesn't mind periods of the game where, obviously he doesn't want the press to be played through as frequently and with as much ease as it has at times. And that, again, maybe we are seeing some sort of consequences of the fact that pre-season was disrupted, the fact that that's not perfect and that's going to maybe take a little bit time to get going. But I don't think he's kind of a fundamentalist about this stuff. I mean, I've had comments on YouTube actually from Feyenoord fans, and they've been pretty consistent on this. Anything I've done that's kind of analysing Slot's start and saying they've been surprised by some of the coverage that was talked about over the summer of kind of all this stuff about, Slot's kind of like a Guardiola disciple, and he's like control. Yeah. He actually doesn't seem to be that bothered about that. And all the Feyenoord fans kind of echo that. He's not really like that. It's more about how can we win this game? And that is kind of the start and the end of it, really. And if that means, having periods of the game where you have 40% possession and the opposition have 60, I don't think he's that bothered, really. Like I say, I think he would want that press to be slightly better, and I think we will see improvements in that as he goes forward with Liverpool. But his main priority is, okay, if they are going to do that, if that's going to happen, I want to make us hard to score past after that once they play through. And that is the one thing he absolutely has achieved. So, I don't think he is that bothered. And I think a lot of the kind of stuff that was written and said about Slot before he came maybe kind of mischaracterized him really and didn't really understand what he's about. Like I say, I want the improvements on that, but I don't think he's kind of, I was going to say pulling his hair out, but good luck with that. But, I don't think it absolutely kills him at times that is happening. I think he's thinking, well, as long as we stay solid and we're doing the right things and we're reacting to being played through in the right way, I'm kind of okay with it. And, let's keep winning games, basically. And that's absolutely what's happening at the moment. And, there will be more improvements in every area, not just the press to come, because he's not had a lot of time yet. But if he, works by that mantra of let's just get through winning games, then, it could be a really, really, really successful debut season for him.
Yeah, no two ways about it at all. And I'll just put a comment there because this is a great name. Chicken Tikka Mo Salah has put there. The no one's reading out comments, talk about interacting with your audience. That was just my mouse not working properly. So my apologies for that. So yeah, feel free, people, if you've seen it, click, put whatever you want there. It'd be good to get that interaction. And this one, we're talking about it regularly, and we are just around the corner from this now. And probably the place to start is a name that's come on the block in the last few days. I've no doubt you've seen all the stories about Milos Krkic and suggestions there's 35 million, 40 million. Liverpool are set to make an imminent move, as a few sites have got as well. It's an interesting one, and we did a bit on him in Transfer Market Eye. What are your thoughts on this as a potential move for Liverpool and the amount, the style, the player, all those types of things?
So I quite like him. When I've watched him play for Bournemouth, I think there's a real talent there. He's still pretty young, I would say, and so there's some development to come. One thing, and obviously Richard Hughes will be fully aware of him having brought him to Bournemouth, so he'll know, what the potential is there, where he's kind of heading, what his trajectory is. He'll have a good feel for that. So I've no doubt it's a player that Liverpool are keeping an eye on, but that's obviously true of so many players, by the way. Yeah. And the thing is, I'd be amazed, and I think I've said this before, if Liverpool added a left back in January. This story seems to be building from nowhere, but I would really, really be surprised, because they've got two left backs on the books who are surely good enough to see out this season. I think it's an area that Liverpool need to look at some improvement in the summer that comes around, and that means jettisoning one of Robertson or Tsimikas. I think that has to happen to get someone in who is more kind of Robertson's level when he was 23, 24 and about to hit that peak. That's absolutely got to be a priority for me. But I don't think they'll head into January thinking it's an absolute desperate need, particularly because both, Robertson, I thought was very good against Aston Villa. I think Tsimikas has been very good this season. I don't think it's going to be a massive problem for Liverpool this season. I think they can get to the end of the season and get someone in who's going to be right for that. And I don't think they'll be rushing out to go and get Krkic in January, because I don't think he's not ready-made to come in and be the one who takes you to a different level either. He's not quite there anyway. But I'd be surprised if they're beating down Bournemouth's door to go and get him in January. I really don't think there's anything in that, and I think people are getting a little bit carried away with that one, to be honest. But one thing I would say, actually, I kind of hope there's a truth in it as well, in terms of the profile that Liverpool are targeting, because all I hear about at the moment, and it's become it's a bit of a bugbear of mine, it's a bit of a trend on social media, is this obsession that Liverpool have to have kind of a left-sided centre-half playing at left-back. And I know that's so on vogue at the moment because Guardiola's doing it and his mate Arteta's copied in. But it doesn't have to be like that. It really, really doesn't have to be like that. There are different ways to skin a cat, and Liverpool don't have to go down that route. We've seen already, this season that there are flaws in that approach. With the fact that when you do have centre halves at your fullbacks, if teams put cover off in certain ways and funnel possession out to those centre halves, they look like centre halves at fullback, and they can't cross and they can't open you up in that particular way that fullbacks typically would. So I really, and this is just my personal opinion, I really hope Liverpool don't go down that route and they do target someone who is more of Krkic's ilk in terms of being a proper left back who can swing the ball in, and basically what they need is a younger Andy Robertson for me. I don't buy into this idea. It has to be a hybrid, because the thing is, in a couple of seasons, Guardiola won't even be doing that anyway. So, try and get ahead of the curve. Don't do the thing he's been doing for the last 2 seasons. And, you don't have to always do what Guardiola does either.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. And as Brad H puts there, might be a buy now for summer purchase if there is anything in it at the same time as well. And I was going to ask you, because people will get some of the questions people are coming up to as well. Left back, it's hard to see it maybe if they won't bomb out Tsimikas and Robertson. Midfield that we've talked about as well. And nothing's definite, but is your gut telling you it could just be January all round, which is not what people want to hear, but what you feel it might be?
I mean, it's always quiet, isn't it? I mean, at most, Liverpool are going to buy one player in January. I think we can all confidently say that. I don't think, you have to kind of lose your mind over that possibility that they might just sign one player. But I don't think I could sit here and confidently say they won't sign anyone. And I don't know why any journalist will put their neck on the block like that, because Liverpool has consistently signed in January. They've done it an awful lot. There's areas of the pitch that they do think that there's improvement. They tried to sign a midfielder at the start of the season. Maybe they've moved on from that idea or whatever. But again, I don't really buy that. I still think they probably need numbers there, because I think Endo is probably going to be here till the end of the season maximum. And I think there are games there for someone else who comes in. So I think it's a possibility that Liverpool sign in January, and I would never rule it out. But it has to always be a long-term signing, someone who's available.
There you go. So apologies, ladies and gents. It does look like David Lynch has froze. It looks like he's literally about to go into a full answer there as well. So it was coming through for me, but I think it's probably stopped for you. So what we'll do, if you just bear with us a quick second, we will do a quick reset and we will hopefully get David back for you. So bear with us a sec and we'll go from there. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we might. We'll see, he's showing for me. But we'll just check. So I'm quite keen to see what he's got to say about the next bit as well. So, I think there's a chance coming through. We are building the suspense here, aren't we? Feel like Adele saying this, or hello from the other side. Hopefully, you can hear me any sec. Can you hear me, David? Have we got you?
Yeah, apologies for that, everyone.
No worries at all. To be fair, it was kind of just into that bit around January, and you said that we can't rule anything out for definite. We don't know. No journalist is going to put the neck on the line and say that, but it might be quite difficult to see anyone in a particular position coming in at the moment.
Yeah, I just think I think there's 100%. There's a chance that they do go for that midfielder if they're available. Say Martin Zubimendi called them up tomorrow and said, actually, in January, I fancy it. You're not telling me that they're going to turn him down because they did a lot of profiling on him. They thought he was going to be a perfect fit for them. I still think that's an area that Liverpool will look to strengthen in the next couple of windows. So, it'd be madness to sit here and say nothing's going to happen. And I think, like I say, in terms of it being a quiet window or whatever, look, there's usually only ever one signing in the January window. Be amazed if there's more than that, because they don't tend to. No club really does more than that in January, typically speaking, or unless your season's going absolutely horribly and you're in the middle of a rebuild or whatever. So, I don't have a gut feeling that it'll be a quiet one. I think it's a possibility at Liverpool. I think it would be silly to rule that out at this point. We just have to kind of hang on and wait and see how it pans out.
Yeah, no two ways about it. And Chicken Tikka Mo Salah's put there, can we talk about contract, please? The 3 big contracts and what could derail our title charge, which is the next topic of conversation. I mean, it's an international break, David. Virgil's having a nice little break. Mo Salah's been enjoying Disneyland Paris. It looks like from social media, Trent's been enjoying a few dates with different supermodels or whatever. It would be a great time to get one big contract locked up and just give everyone a bit of a boost, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it'd just be good to get those contract situations sorted. Yesterday it would have been nice to get them sorted. It's been going on for a while now, and I get people are really worried about it. I don't quite agree with this. It's going to derail the title charge, to be honest. I think everyone's a bit more professional than that, and I don't believe we'll get anywhere near to a situation where there's still all 3 of them are not done by February. There's just no chance it will get sorted. So, not particularly concerned about that. And I think people have been saying, the international break's an opportunity to get them done, but those talks with agents can go on whenever. So that's not a problem, and it won't be the players sat down in a room with Richard Hughes thrashing it out. The only time they'll get involved in that basically is to sign the thing. So, I don't think this has a huge influence on it, but I think, we do know, the thing we know at the moment is they're absolutely in talks with all 3. That is ongoing. And it's just a patient, you've got to patiently wait to the point at which the compromise is reached. But, it does happen, and it happens very much out of the blue. None of us knew about, Konate being close to signing up until it came out. We didn't know about Jarell Quansah, and then he signed it. So, it just happens like that. And I really don't sort of, I keep repeating this point that I think everybody needs to hear it, is that basically this recruitment staff, Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards and all these people were very, very pleased to get in and pleased that they will be running the show now. They will have to, when it gets to the end of this season, if they haven't signed those 3 players up, they will know they have to sign replacements who are as good as them to replace them. That's the position they'll put themselves in. And I just can't see it happening. I can't see them putting themselves in that position, and they know how hard those players will be to replace. And maybe there's one tough decision out of the 3 that gets made at some point. But again, that player will have to be replaced. And if the recruitment staff want to put themselves in that position, in that difficult position, then we will judge it after the first 10 games of next season. And if those players come in and they aren't as good, then they will absolutely deservedly get pelters. But we're so far away from that situation. And some of these players will sign. Maybe all 3 will sign. It's not even kind of worth considering, really. And some of the more, over the top sort of hand wringing about it or worry about it. I just don't get. It's a poor situation that Richard Hughes has inherited, but they're in talks at the moment, and that's all we can kind of say about it.
Yeah, and Brad H has put that there, which probably steers towards your point about the contracts reaching their last 2 years without having an extension is negligent. I think everyone agrees that there, even with all the upheaval at the time, anyone from FSG should have intervened. Do you think that probably steers into Konate a little bit? They can't end up in this situation again where they're running it down like it is.
But I don't want to I don't want to come across as an FSG defender here. But if it came to the point that FSG were directly involved in contract negotiations in that way and were overriding Jurgen Klopp, whose power base had grown to that point, I don't think people would have been happy. It's kind of interesting to me that Jurgen Klopp, soaked up all that power, effectively kind of forced a situation whereby Liverpool had a revolving door of sporting directors and then a temporary one who was basically his mate at the end of things. That was more to blame for the contracts getting in the situation they did than anything FSG did. So for me, I don't really understand how, Jurgen kind of gets away with that one scot-free, really, whereas he was a big reason why Trent is in this position, why Van Dijk is, why Mo Salah is, and why Liverpool are in this position now. And yet FSG are the ones who get the blame. I don't really understand that. I think he had a huge influence on that fact. And then by his last year, then wasn't able to sit down to players like Trent and say, well, I'm going to be here for the next 3 years. So sign the contract. Let's go and win things together. So it's a lot of that actually comes down to Klopp, and I don't, like I say, I'm sure John Henry will get the blame, even though he's absolutely nowhere near that one. But I think there's a lot of mitigating factors there, and Klopp is probably the biggest one.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how all this unfolds. And the only other one I wanted to ask you about the 3 contracts, because you talked about the buzz on X, Blue Sky, everything at the moment. Trent seems to be, I don't know where it's come from, and maybe people know stuff that we don't, almost that Trent seems to be the suggestion or implication, the least likely. And people now jumping on this and taking different stances about what does Trent owe us. And you've probably seen it, people going, we've built him, we've done this, he should be loyal. Others saying the pull at Madrid, it's his job to see his contract, etc. I know you're going to have seen this on the various platforms. Where do you stand on this whole, where is Trent? What does he owe us? Does he seem the least likely situation?
Yeah, so I don't get where the thing comes from that he's the least likely to sign. I think that's purely because there's quite an obvious suitor out there for him in Real Madrid and an obvious place that he could go. But he's as likely as the other two, in my opinion. And I think, again, that's people, and this happens so much with football, is filling gaps in knowledge with certainties that they feel that they can grasp onto. So, for example, that John Achterberg was the worst goalkeeper coach in the world for a little while because Liverpool just had rubbish goalkeepers. And so it was easy for people to just go, okay, I've got a gap in my knowledge actually about what the goalkeeping coach does, but I'll just blame him instead. And we've seen so many similar situations. Liverpool's injury hit season where they were Jurgen Klopp's penultimate season. Pep Lijnders got a lot of blame for that, didn't he, for releasing a book? And then they were actually quite good last season, won a trophy, were in a title race till April. So, clearly, again, it's just a knowledge gap and people fill it. And I think, again, with Trent, we don't know what's going on with Trent. I will happily admit that. I know I'm a journalist, but I absolutely happily admit that, these contract negotiations, as Trent has said himself, are not being played out in public. So very little is publicly known about what is going on, what he wants, what Liverpool wants, where that's up to. So there's a knowledge gap there, and it's being filled by, Real Madrid are talking about him. That must mean he wants to go. That must mean, so we don't get our feelings hurt, we have to post things about him online where we kind of get stuck into him and pretend that we never liked him anyway. I just think people just need to relax a little bit, to be honest. I just find that element of it completely daft and over the top, and as I say, kind of calm down. And in terms of what he owes the club, or what Liverpool owe him and all that, I would just say about loyalty in football is kind of nonsense, really, because everybody wants. If Liverpool sign a player and he turns out he's absolutely terrible, there's no loyalty there from fans. They immediately want him to be sold. They can't stand him. They will be, they'll tweet disparagingly about them when they're in the starting lineup. So, and then when a player is really good, they're absolutely desperate for them to stay, and we'll call them kind of a rat or whatever if there's any suggestion they might leave. So, that loyalty in football, it's not really there a lot of the time, and that goes for both fans and players and clubs. So, a lot of that is overstated. So I don't think it's about who owes anyone what. I think at the end of the day, it has to be a mutually beneficial relationship, which is for Liverpool that they get to keep a world-class player who's a local lad who's brilliant, and that Liverpool will absolutely want to do that. And from the perspective of Trent, he wants to be, yes, at his hometown club, and he wants to be captain, he wants to do those things. But he also has to be a club that's competitive and worthy of a player of his skills who's already won all these trophies to be able to go and do that again. So as I say, it's got to be mutually beneficial. It's not about who owes this or that. It has to work for everyone. And so there's no point going on Twitter, I would say, and starting to maybe slag Trent off or suggest that his head's been turned or he's definitely going to go. Nobody knows anything about that. And we will see how it plays out, and then we can maybe make our judgments on it.
Yeah, I mean, we did the transfer show, me and Trev, this week, and as an AI collective, we did dig in, and funnily enough, we could get people who say they were confident that he was going to stay. We'd get people who say he was off. So the moral of the story was, no one has any idea in simple terms, do they? So let's just wait and see what unfolds on these with N crossed. But yeah, 3 big players, 3 big contracts. We'll see what develops before January. And the final topic to finish on, because speaking of big things, it's a massive week ahead. I mean, Southampton on Sunday, followed by the small matter of Real Madrid, and then Manchester City visiting Anfield in a week. I mean, I'm a bit biased with this personally, and I know Arne Slot is going to say, and he's going to be asked at the press conference, David, you know, will you rotate? And he will say the next game is the most important. I'd bet serious money on that. Is there a bit of you would think, with the international break, maybe players coming back, maybe rest a few against Southampton just because of how big the next two are at all? Oh, we lost him for a second time. Just had a big question as well. Yeah, he has indeed. Chicken tikka Mo Salah, I think, gone again. Right, let me just do a quick check, see if we can get him back for you, because I do want to see what his rationale and what his thinking is in this one. Think we got him. He says with bated breath and a bit of hope. If we don't get him back fully in a minute, I'll give you my honest answer, and you can see if you disagree with me on this, folks. Fingers crossed. Looks like we may have lost him. Well, we'll see if we can get David back, but it'd be interesting to get your thoughts in the chat panel. I'm going to be deadly honest for me about this. I wouldn't mind a little bit, and I'll phrase this carefully, a little rotation for Southampton. I mean, every Premier League game's tough. I'm not going to say it isn't for 1 second, but Southampton are right near the bottom of the table, and you've got players like Endo that I just feel could come in and do a real job for us in this type of game. That's just me being completely honest about that. Also, you look at the normal starters, he doesn't do much rotation. Let's not pretend at all. Arne Slot. Ryan Gravenberch has played every minute of every Premier League game and every Champions League game so far. Every single minute. And he's going to play all these games for Holland. I mean, he came off, I think, with 11 minutes for Holland the other day. So is that a big rest? Let's be honest about that. Then you've got Alexis McAllister, who has just looked tired, I think it's fair to say. We're not really sure if Alexis McAllister has fully recovered from that adductor strain, hasn't he? And on top of that, he played 64 minutes the other night for Argentina. He's probably going to play again at the same time. He's then going to travel tens of thousands of miles on top of that. Wouldn't it be good just to give one of them a rest? And I know people will say, Szoboszlai could come in, Jones, but I just think specifically for this game, wouldn't it be good just for Endo? That is just a personal belief. Do I think he will do that? I am not 100% convinced. It'd be good to know your take on it. But for me, Southampton in the first one, then for the next two, I mean, it's absolutely insane, isn't it, what's going to happen this week? Real Madrid and Manchester City are going to visit Anfield. How tough are these games going to be? Which then means you want your strongest squad and strongest availability. And just as David was kind of about to allude to, because we had talked about it before, we are waiting for updates realistically on Chiesa, Trent, Jota, Alisson, Harvey Elliott as well. Fingers crossed, by all intents and purposes, we can get them back. Can we guarantee that? We don't know for definite. So we'll have to see what unfolds. I think we try and get David back, but I think it looks like we've lost him for the duration of the show. So there we are, ladies and gents. Yeah, we talked transfers, we talked the window, we talked contracts, lots of comments, lots of different thoughts, I think it's fair to say, in the chat panel. So thank you for all your interaction there. But on Monday, the 18th of November, That was another Media Matters for Anfield Index.